doing? Everyone having a decent week? Better than me, hopefully. Great. So, okay, thank you everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. I really want to just do a quick kind of run through about lobbying, what you can expect from lobbying, the best practices, potential issues that can arise during lobby meetings, and generally just how to effectively meet with an elected official and pressure them on whatever issue it is that you're trying to talk to them about on that particular day. Now, normally when we talk about lobbying, especially in this training, you might see some points on this because it's specifically normally geared to our lobby day training, which usually happens, or which will happen, I think, in the next month or so, that my colleague Emily is going to be holding, specifically focused on legislative session and lobbying for our legislative priorities. Things are just a little bit different when we talk about local campaigns, something like electrification of new construction, specifically in Howard County. Obviously, we're targeting your local county officials and not a state delegate or a state senator. So there's just a slight, some slight nuances and some slight changes that occur depending on the level of, lobbying you were doing.
Right, Anthony?
Yeah.
Could we just have people say one thing about their past experience, whether they've met with elected officials several times or once or never?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, so I'm Ruth Alice, and for a couple of years I participated in CCAN and Sierra Club lobby days, so I sort of understand how they do it. And I'll pass it to Mary.
My name is Mary Chu, and no, I have never met with elected officials for lobbying.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm Shell, and I haven't met with them. I mean, I've gone to village board meetings, but not really for lobbying. Yeah.
Yes, I have been on both sides of the fence. I've been an official, I've been lobbied, and I have lobbied officials at federal, state, and local level.
Awesome.
great. How about Joel?
I lobbied several times this week already. Harry and I were at the HCCA meeting. I talked to council members that were there.
They know you well, Joel. You often testify.
And then I spent the evening with them at the zoning board on Wednesday in a technical lobbying mode.
Wow. Okay, how about Carla?
Yes, I've lobbied our county council and the executives before, and the state delegates too.
Wonderful.
Great. And the 443 number, is that you, Harry? Is that a repeat? Or who is on the phone?
This is Paul Verchinsky.
Oh, Paul.
How are you today?
Okay.
I've worked with the Howard County Council for at least 10 years, worked on legislation at the state for about the same amount of time, and I'm a former Fed, so I'm familiar with federal legislation.
Great. And Sherry?
I've done lobbying both at the state and local levels for a few years now.
Well, yes, and you're with the League of Women Voters.
Yes.
You're pretty familiar. So we have a range of experience, from very experienced to people new at this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So for some of you veterans, some of this, might come second nature to you these days. If this is like your 12th or so lobbying meeting, but it's always good to get refreshers, I think. And sometimes it's good to know what you need to keep in mind. And it also is good whenever your team is prepped with you as well. So I'm going to go through this. Of course, if anybody has any questions or want me to clarify or expand on anything, please do so. This is going to be really quick. And once I get through it, we're going to have an opportunity to chat. And I think Ruth Alice might have some other things planned possibly. But yeah, I'm just gonna get started. So I'm just gonna quickly review this because since we do have some new folks, but essentially we're gonna cover what is lobbying, why do we lobby, how do we lobby. I don't know if we're gonna do a role play today. I didn't have it built into my internal agenda, but if we think that's helpful, we could certainly do so. And then a discussion, sort of a pre-meeting planning, an initial pre-meeting planning, and things to consider as we go into setting up our meetings with these elected officials. So what is lobbying? For those of you that haven't lobbied before, you might not know, but essentially it is our way to directly persuade and gather information and speak to our elected officials or power holders, whoever it is. In this context, we are calling this grassroots lobbying. You all aren't paid lobbyists. You aren't, a staff, you're not an Exxon lobbyist, for example. You're not getting paid thousands of dollars to sit down with these individuals. But what's better, and why I think grassroots lobbying is better than that, is that you are actually constituents of the people you are lobbying more often than not if you were doing grassroots organizing and grassroots lobbying. So a benefit that we have going into these county council meetings is that you all live in the districts of the people you are going to be talking to. So that is, a point in your, on your side already. These elected officials, when meeting with you, they will understand that. And they are, probably a little bit more receptive and more willing to hear you out and the points that you have to share than they would be some random paid staffer from, 10 districts over, for example. So what we are going to be talking about today is grassroots lobbying.
And sometimes when we go, we have a staff person like yourself or others from CCAN Sierra Club, League of Women Voters, but they always tell us that the elected officials want to hear from citizens, that they hear from staff people all the time. And
Right.
you all always say the same thing, and they really want to hear citizen voices.
Yeah, and as we go through this and as you prepare for these meetings, the hope is that everybody who's attending, who's a constituent and wants to talk about this issue, is prepared and well versed in the issue enough that they can speak for themselves, concisely on the issue. But in the scenarios where a staffer like myself would be present, my role would be to facilitate maybe introductions and be there to guide or possibly fill in any holes that would appear. So that's normally, go ahead.
Especially if they have technical questions.
Yeah, definitely, especially.
But if not, you never try to answer something you don't know. You say, we'll go and try to get the information and get back to you.
Exactly. And so that brings me to sort of these bullets of what makes a successful lobbyist. So, some no-brainer things that might be hard to remember when you could possibly be experiencing a combative legislator, for example, is to remain personable, patient, and sort of keep your wits about you in terms of how you want the conversation to go, and making sure that you're not getting yourself backed into a corner by a possibly combative legislator or an elected official. And as Ruth Alice just mentioned, this includes admitting when you're uncertain. If they ask a question, you don't have to have the answer right then and there. It's great if you do, but if you don't, you do not want to be caught pulling some random number out of your back pocket that isn't actually correct and then misinforming the possible legislator. And then if they look into it later on, that might sort of cast doubt on the whole meeting entirely if there was some incorrect information shared. So it's totally okay to not know something, and it's totally okay to tell them you don't know something, but that you will follow up with them and you'll try your best to figure out that information and get that to them as quickly as possible. I would say that most elected officials understand that their constituents and volunteers or what have you aren't lawyers, they're not paid, industry folks. So they totally get that you might not know all the numbers or all the math or all the specific policy details of a specific issue. So don't ever feel like you need to have an answer for everything. And the next point is always be gathering information. So the point of having this lobby meeting is mainly to gather information on how they feel about a particular issue, in this case, building electrification. So when we're talking to them and we're talking about, the negatives of having gas in our homes, the pros to building electrification on the economy, on our health, or what have you, we really want to get a good gauge of how they're reacting to the points that we're talking about, and generally what their own thoughts are. Like if they say, I just got an electric induction oven installed in my home because gas was giving me headaches and I hate gas. Obviously, we want to know that. We want to know, okay, this person's already educated on, the issue of gas and they seem pro electrification. So that's great to know. And if they say, I hate electricity, I only use gas to heat everything, I light a fire every night or what have you, then we know, okay, maybe this person needs a little more pushing or education on the issue. So always be gathering information and be prioritizing the things that you talk about. So we're going to get into a little bit again, kind of roles and who owns certain topics. But when you go into a meeting, you need to know clearly what your purpose of being at that meeting is, whether it is just gathering information and doing an initial touch, or if it's saying, hey, we have this written out policy proposal and we want you to introduce this, for a vote. Whatever it is, you need to know that you have priority, so you don't get lost in the weeds of just having random conversations. Especially with some of these elected officials, they like to kind of turn things to what they're working on currently, maybe some of their accomplishments, sort of take the heat off of them having to address or acknowledge a new issue that you're bringing up with them. So keep that in mind. Getting good at an elevator pitch, being comfortable with the issue that you're talking about. You don't have to be well-versed in every aspect of the issue. The best part of being on a team at these lobby meetings is that individuals can take on different parts of the conversation. So just be comfortable with your section of the conversation. So if you're specifically wanting to talk about the health impacts, have a concise, ideally 20-second, a few sentences or so of why the health impacts of gas are important to you. Maybe you have children, maybe you are in the medical field, what have you. Just have a good elevator pitch ready. Keeping track of time. Obviously, legislators don't have all the time in the world. Oftentimes, these are 15 to 30-minute meetings. So we just want to make sure that we don't run out of time without getting to everybody's points, and especially without having the priority touched on. And then constantly ask why, don't take no for an answer. This is in the sense of like, if they say, oh, I'm not really wanting to talk about this right now, or this isn't a priority for me, or I don't think this is a big issue, ask them why, keep them talking. The more we learn about them and the more we get from their answers, the more firepower we have in future meetings or to adjust our campaign strategy or our messaging. So always keep that in mind. Now, how do we ensure a successful lobby visit? So know your specific goal ahead of time. This is very similar to prioritizing your goals. Meet with your team, talk about the specific goal, and ensure you have a path to get there. Know your target and tailor your pitch. This is, some people call this power mapping, but if you are meeting with your district council member, you should know, who they are, kind of maybe their general stance on the issues, maybe how they feel about climate and environmental issues. Are they part of any sort of organizations or faith groups, community groups? Are they like in a Sierra Club member, for example? I know there's some elected officials that are Sierra Club members. That's always good to know. Just get to know your target as much as you can, what motivates them, what issues they care about or they lead on. In some cases, what committees are they on or committees do they chair? And try to tailor your pitch and approach to that. If somebody's really invested in labor issues, for example, and they work with unions closely, and that's a big influence on them, then we can talk about how electrification will bring a lot of really great jobs to the area, and retrofitting jobs, and even with new construction jobs, and they're oftentimes better paying and healthier and safer than fossil fuel jobs. So little things like that. Compelling facts and stories. So these are your main talking points, your messaging. Make them compelling and interesting as much as you can. And then, of course, your personal stories, if you have them. Again, you are their constituent. They want to hear from you and why you personally are invested in this issue. Build that relationship with them. The hope is that this isn't a one and done meeting, that you begin building that relationship or continue fostering an existing relationship with these folks, so that we can continue to have their ear on issues that are important to you and important to us. And then have a strong ask, whether that is, please, we encourage you to support this issue across the state, or we encourage you to create a piece of legislation, what have you. You should always have a strong ask. And then a follow-up plan. If there's any outstanding questions that you couldn't answer, you'll want to have somebody identified to follow up with that legislator, that elected official, with responses to their questions, maybe share some more resources, news articles and stuff like that with them, to further educate them on the issue. And then always have a good leave behind. And this is sort of like a one-pager or a fact sheet, essentially. So a material that will be really easy for them to just look at real quick and digest the information as quickly as possible, and something they can reference to easily if they need to in the future. So pre-meeting planning, the best way to have a successful meeting is, of course, to come in prepared, as I mentioned, and the idea is to have a team. And from my understanding, there's a number of you who already have identified people that live within your district already. So that's really great. So what should be your next step is meeting with that district team to discuss and identify roles. Some people can have more than one role. That's totally fine. But the main roles are a lead, somebody that will kick off the conversation, ensure that our priority topics are touched on and that things are kind of moving smoothly. They will also be the person who will kind of run a debrief afterwards, ensure all of the correct information is reported and shared with the rest of the team, especially those that weren't able to attend a specific meeting or something like that. Then you'll want somebody to take notes. Again, the most important thing about this, or one of the most important things about this, is capturing that information, capturing their responses, their questions, their concerns, what have you. So you'll want to have somebody who's able to take notes while that conversation is actively happening. And then be able to summarize it at the end. A timekeeper. Again, these meetings are oftentimes short. Sometimes these legislators are literally sort of running out the door while having the conversation with you. So ensuring that we're keeping on time, like doing time checks, maybe talking with people beforehand, your group beforehand, to really sort of, okay, we're going to give this person 3 minutes to talk about this issue, 3 minutes to talk about this issue. And to keep people on that as best as possible, so you don't run out of time to make your ask or get all the information you're looking for. And then a closer. And again, these roles can overlap, but somebody to sort of wrap up, make that ask, leave the material with them, and ensure any details are shared so that you can follow up with them. So like if you need to share your contact information or anything like that for the legislator to reach out if they need to, all of that great info. And then, like I said, part of the pre-meeting planning needs to be identifying what everybody is going to touch on. Again, some people have different reasons for being interested in a particular issue. So if you have children, and that's what's motivating you to electrify your home so that they have a safer and healthier air quality in the home, then maybe touch on that. Talk about how your child, you're worried about your child's health and respiratory health or what have you because of gas. You care about climate change. If you've been in a home that caught fire or exploded because of gas infrastructure, stuff like that, something personal to really kind of bury yourself in their brain a little bit. So when they think back on this conversation and why this issue is important, they're like, oh yeah, my constituent, their daughter has asthma attacks because of their stove in their oven when they cook inside the kitchen. But be sure to keep it concise. Again, we are not working with unlimited time here. So while it is an important issue and we want you to express the importance to them, it's important to keep it concise. Some potential pitfalls. I've kind of covered some of these already, but losing your temper is often one of the easiest things you can fall into, especially if you're encountering sort of a dismissive and combative elected official. I hope that's not the case with most of the people you talk to, but it is the case with some of the legislators I've personally lobbied, in the sense where they're just very dismissive, like, oh, I don't care about that issue, or that's not really an issue because I said so, or what have you. The thing you have to remember is that you just can't lose your temper, because that just fuels them. If anything, it doesn't help us, it helps them. Obviously,
Howard County people are pretty good. People will be talking to.
hopefully no screaming matches. Let's avoid that. No, not knowing relevant info about your target. So like if you go into a meeting and you don't know, you know, if they belong to a particular committee, or you don't know that they hate solar panels, or they love fossil fuels, or they own like a fossil fuel company or something like that, that could lead to an awkward situation. So, you know, just do your due diligence and kind of looking into who they are, how they've handled themselves in the past, what their campaign was like what did they run on? Did they run on, you know, creating healthy communities and climate and what have you? Or did they say like, let's put an oil well in everyone's backyard? So you want to know that as much as possible. Don't have too many facts or statistics. It's great to come prepared with numbers and stuff like that, but that is usually the last thing, unless it's really impactful, that will stick with a legislator's brain, especially if you just have a whole like multi-paragraph rundown of percentages and decimals and stuff like that. That's very alienating and intimidating to a lot of legislators. So try to limit that as much as possible. Again, you want to keep things personal to you as much as possible. You always want to ask questions, so don't find yourself not asking any questions, because you always want to make sure that you come away with at least an understanding of where the legislator is leaning towards on a specific issue. And then of course you need to make sure you have a plan for that strong ask. Again, identifying a closer, identifying what that specific ask is, or what the sort of next steps are. And I think that is all. I know that was really condensed and really quick. So please ask any questions. Ruth Alice and others that are more, you know, that are experienced in lobbying as well, feel free to throw in your personal experiences and your suggestions. Yeah, let's hear it, folks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a previous council person from District 5, which is the Republican district, worked for a utility.
Do you know which utility off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think it was BG&E, but anyway, that he's not there anymore.
I have a question. The bit about, you know, knowing your target or knowing the person you're going to be speaking with, and, you know, wanting to find out more about them. I mean, there are some things that might be out there in public domain, but should you have like some questions to start off with if you want to explore a certain aspect of how they feel on a given subject, if you don't know a lot up front?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, yeah, especially with there are some legislators that are sort of ambiguous and keep some stances on issues close to their chest. So I think having some questions for clarifying their position on things is a great idea. The issue is you don't want to go so far off of your topic that you don't, you know, you can't get back on track. So if they've never spoken about energy or climate or building electrification, if they're a complete unknown on the issue, of course, you're going to want to come in and ask them like, okay, you know, what do you think about building electrification? What do you think about the merits of do you know anything about the dangers of gas and the pros of electrification? At that point, if they say, no, I don't know anything, then you can go on to sort of give them those really easy kind of low-hanging fruit facts and points about the pros and cons. But if they do say, yes, I'm well-versed, I speak to developers all the time and they say gas is great, or I talk to activists and they say electricity is great, then you have that context and you'll just sort of have to be prepared to tailor the conversation to whichever way that goes. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I have a question. Could we do research? Like, I know that there were a couple current council members who were involved with passing a law about what restaurants can do with respect to plastic straws and implements. So if they were in favor of that, you would expect that they would be receptive to another idea. But is there a way to like research each council person and see what legislation they were involved with in the past, pro or con? You know, the plastic bag issue was at the county level also, wasn't it?
Yes, and that's a good idea. I've been in groups that asked each team to have a write-up on the person that they were going to visit. We have a lot of knowledge in this group about the different council people. Some people in this group have been very involved in things at the county council level. And some of us been a little involved, maybe some have been none. So we need to put our information together. So the team leader or the team when it meets may talk about this and gather information before the meeting. So that you to share. And we actually have people involved in this effort. Like one of them is a previous member of the Howard County Democratic Committee. So knows all of the elected officials very well. Yeah, so we do have some of that information we can share.
Yeah, and
I haven't written it all, you know, I don't know that I or anybody else have written it all down, which would be a wonderful resource for groups. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, so as Ruth Alice says, this group has a tremendous, you know, they have tremendous resources in themselves being the resources. In the case that there are unknowns or you are in a situation where you don't have people that are as educated or up to speed with how the council members have been and what their, you know, reputation is or what have you, what I normally do is if you go into like Google and you type in like a council member Jonathan or Montgomery County or whatever it is, and click news at the top, you can get like the most recent news articles, you know, sorted by date with them mentioned. And oftentimes from just those going through those news articles, you can see like, okay, he was featured in a news article talking about this specific policy proposal and this priority, or here's his campaign page and he talks about climate change here. So like looking at what they are getting visibility on in the media is a big thing, because that also shows you what they care about. If they're putting on the effort to get interviews with media or show up to events and talk about an issue, then that's an issue that's important to them. And from that, maybe you can kind of gauge where they're at on your issue. Of course, you can also do a deeper dive. I know on the state level and federal level, you can check their voting records. I assume you can in Howard County. There's some, Ruth Alice, is there some sort of database where you can see like stuff they've sponsored or stuff they voted on and how they voted on like the county webpage?
Probably, but I don't know. I haven't checked that.
I'm sure there is somewhere, and that's
If you go to the legislation search, you can go to the advanced search and search by sponsors and things like that. And you might have to go through a lot of them. And you can also search by keywords. And HoCo also does a blog where he analyzes the current council's voting record with his own unique analysis of how they are pro-developer and not voting in favor of lower taxes and things.
right.
So he analyzed, so you could see a lot of the bills through there.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool resources that you can find. Harder the more local you get. There's just less, you know, people keeping an eye on them. But like I said, if you can just find the recent news that person was in, oftentimes that can give you most of what you need.
As Liz Walsh pointed out on Tuesday, most of her bills deal with trees and kids. And she has several tree bills up for next week if anybody wants to deal with them.
I'm assuming that in this particular campaign, we already have our strong ask, although I'm not exactly sure what we've decided the wording of what we're asking, but the campaign to electrify Maryland for new residences is pretty straight, it's out there. And I assume that, that's the strong ask. I mean, we're gonna be showing what we want, just by the topic. Is that a fair statement? I mean, and I guess we just have to see how they respond as far as taking a meeting from all of us. And that might be some insight into how they feel about that topic.
Right. And it's very possible that they come to the meeting with something in mind. They might, like you said, they might already have thoughts on this issue. I know Ruth Alice said some of them have seen, presentations on this issue in the past. So some of them might very well be considering a way forward on this, and they just need some guidance on how to do that. Maybe they want to know that there's community support for this out there, and know that they have some support behind them, to help them get something through. So yeah, it's, again, the most important thing is that information gathering, figuring out how much they know about the issue and where they stand on it. And, is it a priority to them? Are they thinking about it, or is it just completely not in their mind right now?
So we did the Electrify Maryland Now Zoom last year that almost 100 people attended, but I'm not sure council members were there. I'm not sure how much this is on their radar.
Well, it also might be, maybe part of our work is to get it higher on their priority list.
Absolutely. Hi, Anne. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah. So I guess we can talk about this, but my thought was that this is the first meeting to gauge their level of interest and their to do feelers to see who might be willing to support this.
So I guess my question was, well, is the lead in, do we, we're working on a fact sheet, do we send that to them first, or do we send them a set of questions or whatever? I mean, that initial contact, I'm not exactly sure what the best strategy is of how to approach, how to frame it.
So it'd be interesting to know what you think, Anthony, and then others here. Anthony's revised the fact sheet. I don't know if you can pull it up and share it. I was in the process of trying to send it to the first people that had registered, but people have come on the call since, so I'll send it out to everybody after the call. We were, you put it in the chat.
Yeah, so I didn't change any of the language. I just took the language that was in the most recent one and just sort of formatted it onto a one-pager.
Do you want me to show it?
Please show it. It'd be good to work on it together.
But Anthony, the version I have has the CCAN heading at the top. Did you do another version without it, or I was confused?
It can be removed. It's just a placeholder for now. Especially if you all don't want a CCAN header on there, I can get that deleted.
Okay, so I was wanting to make sure I had the latest one.
Yeah.
I like the CCAN header.
Well, I think if we keep CCAN's logo on there, I think I would want to, if possible, maybe add other groups' logos that are working on this issue.
Oh, absolutely. Our group, of course, and there are other groups too. So let me.
Yeah, if we want to do that, if you want to send me the logos, if you're able to collect those, I can either get it in there or have our digital person work up something probably nicer to get them together. But yeah, like I was saying, I didn't change the content. I just formatted it a little differently, make it a little easier for them to just see the quick bullets. I don't think there's any issue with it being a front and back one pager, but it sounds like the group wants to stick to one page, so that's totally fine. So we just need to make sure that all of these points are touching the main things that you want to hear. And then on the pages 2 and below, those are just the backup talking points that whoever wrote this up included. And so I just put them there. Those are not to be given to the legislators in that format.
And we could add more backup talking points.
Mhm.
We just wanted, so next week is let me do stop share. Next week is the Howard County Sustainability Day. And 2 groups that are co-sponsors we're going to have 2 Zooms that are part of Howard County Sustainability Day. One at 2 and one at 5. And they're both on building electrification. Anthony and maybe Sheeta from RMI, she's going to get back to me later today, are going to speak at the first one. And 2 people that the Maryland Sierra Club invited that are working in regional or national groups on buildings are going to speak at the second one. But 2 groups that are co-sponsors of our Zooms and co-sponsors of this campaign are going to be tabling at the event. The Howard County Sierra Club and Howard County Our Revolution. And they want to have a handout at their table. So I am hoping that you all are happy with this one pager, or if not, if it needs any revisions, that they can be made before Tuesday at some point when I need to get copies made to give to these groups for tabling. That and if there are other materials that we can think of between now and then to get copied.
This is Paul Verchinsky. I read over the one pager. I thought that was a very good job. I think it lays out what's needed.
Great.
Sorry, you're good. Go ahead.
Ruth Alice, you were talking about putting the other logos on. Do you have Transition Howard County's logo?
So Anne has, I can probably find it, but if you have it, if you can get, I know you and Charlie are in transition. Can you get it formally approved by that group and send us the logos? And
I can sure try.
Yeah. I think it's a no-brainer. I am.
If you send me the one pager, it'll be easier. If you email me the one pager, then I can just forward it to the board and say, do you want to sign on? Within 24 hours, they should be back to me.
Okay. Or the Ecology Institute?
Margot. I can ask Margot to forward it.
Right. And any other group that you all are with, your green teams in congregations. Let's see. We could add them, we can add lots of groups that are I'm sure there are groups that will sponsor this, and I just am running out of time to do it all. I need help.
I think at least that HoCo Climate Action should be on there, because at the bottom of the one pager, it does state your name and address, or your name and the group's address. So if I think at least we should put that on there.
Oh,
I would be
absolutely.
willing to pursue like with the League of Women Voters, but I can guarantee you nothing's happening by the time you need the printouts for next week.
Well, this is an ongoing thing, so.
Right, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. If we can't do
Right.
anything else, at least if we could get, HoCo Climate Action's logo on there.
Oh,
I think that'd be
absolutely.
great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for next week. And like you said, it's a living
Right.
document.
Right. Yeah, if you think about it, when we did the fracking campaign eons ago, we ended up with, well, that was a statewide campaign, but we ended up with 100 or 150 groups signed on.
Wow.
And there were, there was a whole page of logos. So yeah, I know this is such a no-brainer that we can get more groups. And I feel every day like I fall short. I never get my goals done for that. Anybody that can help, greatly appreciated. So we are running out of time to have breakout groups for, I think we might need to do those like district by district to have meetings of people to meet with legislators in that district. But what about the ask? Could we, yeah, Anthony, could we, does what I said make sense? That we would go in and have this be an exploratory meeting?
Yeah, I think so. And I think now we thankfully have a generally positive, if not neutral, response from the Attorney General. So I think coming into these meetings armed with that letter as well is important. Maybe you guys can print those out and leave that as well with them.
Right.
So yeah, an exploratory hearing, and if there's any pushback, I think that's a great thing to bring up. Like, look, we are at the stage of exploring this issue. This is something that's important and needs to happen in Maryland. We've already talked to the Attorney General. This is something your county can do. What is your interest level? Do you plan to do something? And if not, let's start this dialogue. The one thing I also wanted to say and follow up to what you were just saying about setting up meetings is that keep in mind that while it's great to get these scheduled, as soon as possible when you're ready, you don't have to have them all like the same day or the same week. So if one district meets one day and they have some feedback, they can share their experience and their feedback with the other districts that have yet to have a meeting. So it's important through this process to continue sharing, coming together and sharing data and experiences and what's working and what's not working.
And the other thing is that everyone doesn't have to be from that district, because we represent groups that are countywide. That is between the Sierra Club and Our Revolution and HoCo Climate Action. We all have lists that are countywide. But we would like to have a majority of the people from that council person's district. And maybe if a group is could use one or two other people experienced in lobby meetings, people from outside that council district could join. Does that make sense?
Could I discuss your
Yeah,
entire
can you-
strategy? And I
Go
heard
for it, Joel.
Paul, because Paul was part of my comments. Deb Young and Liz Walls expressed on Tuesday that they're basically overwhelmed with too many things happening. And that the community is being overwhelmed with the general plan update and the complete streets update and apparently I missed a park update. Did I miss anything, Paul?
No, I think you got it well.
So part of this, I think what the upcoming HoCo by Design general plan updates is to try to go to those meetings and to get a sentence or two put into the general plan. And if not, you've at least started discussing